SoE Live, episode 3. Hey, welcome back to SoE Live. I'm Griffin.
I'm Eric.
And today we're talking to Ben from GroMobi. Ben, I guess Ben graduated from JMU in 2010, correct?
Yep.
What was your major?
I was management. I was the technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship concentration.
Awesome. And so Ben started a company, GroMobi, which is located in Harrisonburg.
Yep.
And you just expanded into a new location?
Yeah, we have a satellite office in Northern Virginia.
That's awesome. Can you tell us just like base level, what is GroMobi?
Sure. So we are a custom mobile development firm, and right now we specialize in educational iPad apps. We're making a transition from a custom services firm into a product firm, and we currently have a bullying prevention iPhone app and web app product that we're working on.
Awesome. You got a question?
Yeah, so let's start back a little bit towards when you first got interested in entrepreneurship, and like maybe even towards what sparked GroMobi and where did that start?
Sure. So I guess I've always kind of had aspirations to be an entrepreneur. When I was 11 years old, I was in a summer camp that I hated. And my mom told me that the only way that I would get out of that summer camp was if I had a job. And so,
You were 11.
And I was 11.
Wow.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of context, my parents have had their own business for 25 years now.
Oh, wow.
In Charlottesville, Virginia. So at that time, Auto Spa was born, and I made a car detailing company.
That's cool.
At first, it took me like 3 days to do an SUV. So I started with like my grandparents' cars, got wax like everywhere that it shouldn't be, made all the mistakes. But then by the time I was like 16, 17, my friends were all on lifeguard stands making like $6.50 an hour, and I was making like $20 an hour. So I was like, all right, and I drive my own schedule, right?
Yeah.
So that was like a start, but I've always been an ideas guy. I've always liked to kind of try and predict like what the next thing is gonna be. For instance, in 5th grade, I called that the automated grocery scanners that you now see everywhere, those checkouts. Now, obviously, I wasn't the only person ever to think of that, but I was excited that I thought of that, and then it came to fruition.
And had you not been a 5th grader, maybe you could have done it.
Right, yeah, exactly. So kind of throughout my life, there have been occurrences of just like the whole idea of futurism, but futurism in and of itself is basically entrepreneurship to a certain extent, because you're looking at existing problems and you're trying to figure out how you can solve them.
Right.
So yeah, that's always been kind of a driving force. And then when I got to JMU, College of Business, like the entrepreneurship program, that was great. And then thereafter, initially I thought I wanted to go into law school, but then it was like September, I was stressing. It was only the 2nd month into school. I was about to take my LSAT, and it was like, you know what? Forget this. At that time, I thought I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer, and to do that, you have to go to like basically top quarter of schools. I wanted to go to UCLA. Anyways, so yeah, I decided that I wanted to get into technology basically. And then my first venture outside of school, once I graduated, and then 3 weeks later, I went down to Gainesville, Florida, and started working for a music startup called Groove Shark. You guys may have heard of them recently in that they just had a huge lawsuits decision against them. At that time, though, they were still in the good. So yeah, that was very cool because I got to start interning with a company that had 35 million monthly active users. I learned like the online advertising industry inside of like a couple weeks, literally. But that was a good jumping off point because I got to see a company that was at 50 people, and when I left, they were at 150 people.
Wow.
So I took a lot of great experience from that. But to kind of fast forward to today, Chad and I actually met in Carol's venture creation class. So we knew of each other, but we didn't know each other per se. Like he was in a different group.
Chad is your GroMobi?
Yes, sorry. Chad is my co-founder.
Okay.
And he was working on a sports engagement app at that time that was still in early phases. He saw I had product experience, reached out to me on LinkedIn. We talked on the phone, like, oh my gosh, we clicked immediately, and we're like, hey, we got to start a company like now. And so we did. And that was February of 2012. We worked back and forth at each other's places, a week in Centerville, a week in Charlottesville, doing our 1 week sprints. Felt good about that. That was only the two of us at the time.
What were you building during that?
So during that time, we were basically trying to spin up the concept for the business.
Okay.
And also kind of figure out like what was a starting point. The first 3 months of the company, we spun up a roadmap that at the time we thought was like a 2-3 year roadmap. Turns out it was like a 10-year roadmap. But yeah, after a while, we moved back to Harrisonburg because we just had good connection with the university. And new teachers knew we could do a successful internship program here. So we moved on to West Market. We had like 4 people working out of our living room, so we had like the true
Wow.
starving entrepreneur type.
Right.
Exactly. But yeah, those were kind of our beginnings.
Awesome.
So what was the original idea of GroMobi? What were you doing?
The original idea of GroMobi was actually to become a mobile incubator.
Okay.
So we wanted to help accelerate college students into teams making mobile software. That was a grand vision at the time. And we sort of accomplished that to a small extent. We did this program called the Dev Frat, which was a co-ed mobile development fraternity. We sought funding for that. We got some funding through a company called Accelerator. We specialized on their SDK, and that's how we got them to, invest in us.
Yeah.
And we did that for a semester, and then realized that there was a bit of a gap between college curriculum and this particular SDK, and that we wanted to drive our own future because it's not a good place to be when you have to strictly rely on angel money or venture capital.
Talk about so right now you do a lot of development for clients and you're doing some of your own products, but so you've been doing services. What was the process of getting your first client and who was that?
That's a really good question. So we started out as a responsive web firm, or at least that was our first venture into services. Even before that, we knew we wanted to be mobile, but we needed to start somewhere where we could develop it, right? And WordPress happens to have an incredible third-party market of all of these different plugins and themes and things that you can leverage, code sets. So that's where we started off. And essentially, initially, we had to leverage the platform. And that's what we did with our mobile platform at first, too. WordPress, Fortune 500 companies are using it. NBC or whoever, all these people have their blogs there. So we were kind of using that for our marketing collateral and our pitch towards people. Our very first client was a summer camp called Camp for Real. And yeah, we made their website for $1,000 in like a couple weeks. And that was like our jumping off point.
Right.
And for quite some time after that, we were in a similar position where we didn't have a deep portfolio, where we kind of just really had to basically hustle and just call a lot of people, try and get a lot of exposure. And initially, when you're getting into something like that, you're not confident about your price points at that time. You're just like, you really want that deal very badly.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting learning process, just kind of understanding price points, product offerings. And that was a great place to jump off, just learning how to become a company. That's what we did with web. And by the time we got to 15, 20 websites, then we're like, okay, we can graduate from web, let's get down to mobile. And that was really where we wanted to be the whole time.
So how did you wade those waters of figuring out how to price? I think that's a question a lot of us have is I don't know what to charge. In a service industry, I don't know how to charge this, I don't know what my value is. How did you determine what your value was?
Sure. Initially, it was kind of identifying, what's the market?
Right.
But when you're speaking like that for website development, it's a market of one, the person you're trying to sell to at that time. So initially there was kind of, figuring that out to a certain extent. After we had a couple projects under our belt, we understood how many hours it took, and then we could go from more of a cost and resources basis. And then after we had a portfolio of a couple sites, we could start doing value pricing. How much is this worth to you?
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the progression there.
That's awesome.
Very cool. I want to make sure you guys
Any questions
can jump in
so far? Want to jump out?
Okay, cool.
So you started as an incubator, or the idea was to start an incubator, move to services. Now you're in products.
Yeah, so we're just making our transition from a custom development services company to a product company, which is actually a relatively common storyline amongst a lot of large companies today. They start out as a web services firm or a mobile services firm. They understand how to build product, how to spec a project, just kind of cut their teeth on building products, right? And then for us, we kind of have naturally, through basically a series of coincidences, ended up where we are today, where we are looking to best leverage our past experience to the greatest extent that we can.
Right.
And with this initial product that we're building, that's kind of precisely what we're doing, because that really frames our entire story in a congruent way. So it makes sense what we've done to date. But I think that's definitely can be a struggle for a lot of early companies, is trying to find commonality between what it is that you're trying to do.
So it was a good progression that you grew while you were making all these working as a service company, and then now you can create your own stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Sure. So we're currently working on a bullying prevention product that consists of an iPhone app for students and a web app for teachers. And essentially the idea is that students are able to capture or report bullying incidents, whether that's themselves, they're a bystander, it's their friend. That's one piece of it. The other piece is that students at this school have an awareness that anybody at any time could be watching them, and hopefully that's a deterrent to them, acting out, basically.
Right.
And then the administration piece of it is that there is, one, a system in place that gives them steps and procedures around how to deal with these incidents, and two, it's a case management tool. So they're able to promote a good school climate through using technology that children are comfortable with. That's really the driving piece of it, is having a tool that kids are comfortable with, because the model for the last 10 years has been stop, tell a teacher, and as a result of that policy, 80% of bullying incidents go unreported.
Interesting.
Where do you want GroMobi to go? What's the future plan for GroMobi?
Well, right now we're really focused on making a big win out of this first product that we're building. I think that we definitely have a lot of potential as a company to continue to expand in education, but for now we're looking to really scale a company so that we have a good foundation to start from, because if you don't have consistent revenue and an ability to grow your team, it's very difficult to make new things. But once you get to a larger size, you have full-time employees versus 1099 contractors,
right.
Then you're in a much better position to take more risks.
Yeah. How has that been? I know you have a bunch of interns with you. How do you find them? How do you train them? What's that process like?
Sure. So in the context of JMU specifically, we run listings on Recruitaduke, and that's been somewhat helpful. In the past, we've done a lot of talking within computer science classes, MAD classes, some college of business classes, and those are kind of hit or miss as a recruiting event. But what's been most helpful is gaining interns that are working on the recruiting process, are helping us with HR so that we can continue to have momentum and effort there. Yeah, that's been one huge strategic advantage, is aligning yourself with people that have been doing it for 20 years. If you're a 20-year-old or 22-year-old, you don't have 15 years experience. You just don't.
Right.
It's not your fault. It just is what it is.
Yeah. Interesting.
What did you take most from JMU that you think really prepared you, or what did you wish that you learned at JMU that you didn't, to help start your own company and hire employees and just learn all of the details of starting a business?
Sure. I think College of Business gave me a good foundation in terms of theoretical thinking frameworks, how to approach a problem and identify solutions, things of that nature. But theory really helps you to a certain extent.
Right.
I think that what probably helped me the most in college is trying to have experiences of actually going out and doing something. Getting out there and getting your hands dirty with whatever it is that you're trying to do. I don't think there's anything that is a substitute for that. And I would say, like, as a testament to that, since in my first year or 2 years out of college, I probably learned an order of magnitude more than I learned in college, right?
So what was that experience like at Groove Shark? And would you recommend that to other students wanting to be an entrepreneur? Would you recommend they work for a small startup first?
Definitely, 100%. Like, the thing that was great about that situation was that they were looking for proactive, reliable go-getters. So if you identified an area of need for them, what's that? Oh, all right. Well, actually, to speak to that, they only offered me an unpaid internship, and they said, listen, we're not hiring people right now. And I was just kind of thinking in my head, like, oh, yeah? And
let me prove myself.
Yeah. And so that's the attitude that I came in with, and I worked there for 4 weeks and then got hired. So,
wow, that's cool.
But yeah, the point is that within startups, there's so much opportunity that if you can get in there and identify and make yourself a valuable, piece of their business, then there's going to be a position there for you, which is totally counterintuitive to someone who thinks that the only way to get a job is to send out your resume to a billion people on Monster.com or something like that.
Monster, I didn't even know it was still a thing.
Okay.
Any other questions from?
My question.
Who are you?
Oh, yes. My name is Sir. I'm a junior finance major, so I have one project going on right now with a co-founder called Vendor. It's a website that allows JMU students to buy and sell, books, supplies, appliances, any good that's legal within the boundaries of, JMU.
Sure.
But among each other without the interference of, local townies or, other college students. So my question focuses more on the topic of leadership as a co-founder. To what extent does your team collaborate, and how much do you delegate to them, or do you delegate at all?
Yeah, I would say that delegation is key. Now, that's one of the most difficult things, though, to really wrap your arms around, especially starting out in a working environment as a leader, is figuring out how you can delegate. And really what that mostly comes down to is who you're working with. So really recruiting people that you feel like you can trust, that you can give initial projects that aren't going to, interfere with your main pipeline of work, whatever that may be, to kind of gain a level of trust and some working experience with that individual. But yeah, thereafter, really delegating as much as possible. But again, that's something that's probably one of the most difficult parts. Even just among co-founders, it took us a while to figure out what the balance of who did what. So I mean, I guess like the best thing to start yourself off is to try and find co-founders that have different skill sets than you. That will make that transition a little bit easier. But yeah, building that initial working trust with your co-founder, with your interns, with your employees is like the first part. And then thereafter, project management theory isn't that complicated per se. So once you figure out how you can efficiently task people out. Another thing to mention is having a good project management tool. You're not going to be able to overlook every single person within your organization every day or even once a week. So at GroMobi, we use Redbooth, and through that, everyone tracks their hours. We have different projects, different tasks. I can see those tasks come to resolution. So if I want to see what the team has been up to yesterday or for the past week, I just pull up my app on Redbooth and just scroll through the activity feed, and that gives me a good read on what people are doing. You can also post files there. There's a million different PM tools you could use, but figuring out one that works for your team and really latching onto that is important. And the other thing is, the whole saying of you can't manage what you're not measuring. Having a way that you're actually tracking people's time, whether or not it's related to any sort of payment, is important because that gives you a historical reference to how long certain things are going to take. So in the future, when you're projecting how long it's going to take you, you actually have a basis of which to do that from.
You said it's called Red Meet or Red?
A red booth.
Red Booth. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the show Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
How they what is that called? Where they have those
Scrum.
Scrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like similar where you can visually see the project getting done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can even become a Scrum Master, a certified Scrum Master. I don't know if you knew that.
What? Teach me.
Yep.
I don't know
Yeah.
what that is.
Yeah, just go online and Google it. You can get a
Scrum
certification.
Master.
But yeah, all to do with Agile.
Yeah. You had another question? No? Any other questions? Come on. Yep.
Hi, I'm Miranda, and I'm in hospitality management. I don't have any projects currently, but did you ever have any major setbacks, and how did you mentally rebound from them and overcome them?
As a startup, you definitely have many setbacks. It's kind of initially an experience of, trial by fire. And so I think that really the only thing the best thing that you can do is maintain a certain mindset of trying to stay right here. Because otherwise, a startup just by nature is just like this every single day. Like you might have oh, this is great. Oh, geez, where's the company going? In a single day. So you just have to really, over time, you develop a mentality of just staying level-headed and realizing that if you continue to work strategically, that you're going to have more wins and eventually it's going to catch up to you. I don't know if that kind of fully answers your question, but yeah, just taking every day, one day at a time, and then just trying to maintain perspective of a longer time horizon. And that's actually something that's really difficult to do is keeping a perspective of this quarter versus this week.
Yeah, so sort of in tandem with that, is there a lesson you eventually after 2 years got beaten in your head, and now if you had started over with that knowledge, it would have been much smoother?
I know this sounds stupid simple, but things take time. That's really kind of one thing that took a while to learn, and as a result, you have much better expectations. And if your expectations are aligned with reality, then you're not going to be upset, right? Yeah. So that was one thing that took a while because you're eager to make a lot of progress every day. If you're putting in 40 to 60 hours a week, you want to see stuff happen now. So yeah, just really trying to keep that in mind and trying to understand how long things might actually take. It's usually, it's not going to happen in 2 months. So just knowing that, unless you have an incredible amount of resources to start with, you're in for the long haul.
Yeah.
How do you like having your headquarters in Harrisonburg? Have you seen that as a positive and negative?
It's actually not really, I think, influenced us too much. Granted, if we were in a major metropolitan area, there would be more opportunities, but with those more opportunities, there would also be more competition. And given that we're in digital services, it really doesn't matter exactly where we're located. As long as there's a trust and connection via the telephone and Skype, that's really what you have to do. And you have to do that whether you're 3 doors away or hours away.
Right.
So I think it's actually been an advantage for 2 reasons. One is there is relatively low amount of competition for student talent. There is with recruiting and post-college experience, but as for experience here with a technology firm,
You get all the good eggs.
Maybe not all of them, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
we do better as a result of that, right? And then the second part of that is it's a lower cost of living, so which means a lower burn rate, which means you can live longer on less, which is definitely a plus in the early days.
Ramen will stay longer. Yeah,
Yeah.
Did you guys get, I mean, I know you get funding for the dev rat, but what about just GroMobi?
Yes,
Yeah.
GroMobi did get, I don't know how much I like throwing around figures per se,
No, yeah.
but we got a nest egg of a certain amount from investors that are in the Sonoma area that they actually were nice enough to give us a limited amount of funds early on, and then once we had made more progress, made another investment that gave us more security.
That's awesome.
And those were independent or angel investors.
How did that process work? How did you find them and raise it?
Sure. So I was lucky enough to have a mentor coming out of college that had experience in technology, had experience in raising seed rounds, A series, B series, multi-million-dollar series. And so that was a huge perk for me. It just so happens that my dad used to babysit this guy when my dad was 13 years old. And so we made a relationship, and then these two investors came directly through his network, and the only way that we were afforded that opportunity was through the relationship that we had built, and therefore at least partially influenced by the fact that he was bringing us to these people, which meant that they knew that he signed off on us, so that was definitely huge.
It's all about people still.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Another question?
Just sir again. Since we're on the subject of money, in the case of a startup that's on a tight budget, what's your take on outsourcing? Are there some things that you would outsource, or are you completely against outsourcing?
I would say neither, in that I don't have a perspective to one or the other. There are definitely scenarios where outsourcing makes sense. But as a lean startup, it's your prerogative to figure out as much of it as you possibly can. And with the amount of tools there are on the web, in mobile, in web, in web services, all sorts of services with APIs, there's really generally not a good reason why you can't make some sort of prototype or 1.0, or try and hack something together yourself to start with, because as a beginner in building things, you're not going to know how to appropriately spec your product, which means you're not going to know how to appropriately manage your contractor or your outsource. Or it's more difficult, let's put it that way. So if you don't happen to get the right person, then that could end up in not the best situation, which means you just depleted some of your small amount of funds to begin with. So it's definitely a great idea to try and assemble a team to the extent that you can. But again, there are absolutely times when it makes sense to outsource. The other thing that I would say is it also makes sense to get high-level consulting from people that really know what they're talking about. So you go to them, this is our project, they help you to spec it, and then you have a better understanding, and then you can go more reliably outsource that.
Thank you.
Great answer.
Yeah.
My name is Zeno. So if you have a potential customer that wants an app built by you, how would he or she have to go about it?
Sure, that's a great question. So we've kind of over time developed a requirements gathering process where we take the individual through first like storyboarding, which means like essentially what are the use cases of that particular app? Like what's the story behind using the app? And people can usually connect with that. And then from there you go to user stories, which is as a user, I want to blank so that I can benefit, whatever that benefit might be, and you iterate on those. And then from there, you get to wireframes of just inventorying what screens you're going to have or what functions you're going to have, and then how those screens or functions relate to each other. And then you would make a screen hierarchy in the same way that you would with web, home page, page 1, page 2, page 3, just knowing how they connect to each other. And then the next step from there is once we have fully understood, like, or to the extent that we can, without doing paid discovery, understand what it is you're trying to make, we can give you a quote. Now, if your project is so large that we can't do that in a reasonable amount of time, then we'll offer a paid discovery package, in which case we'll make your wireframes, we'll make the 3 or 4 most important mock-ups of your 3 or 4 primary screens, and then from there we can potentially give you a fixed quote. So yeah, we do work on an hourly basis, and we also work on a fixed basis. There's pros and cons to both.
Interesting. I think
it's
yeah, that was actually probably a pretty good place to end. So where can people find out more information about?
Sure, you can go to our website, GroMobi.com.
do you have an app?
We do have our own apps, but not like the GroMobi app.
Okay.
The GroMobi app has been in the idea phase since we started, but yeah, it hasn't made it to the front of the pipeline quite yet.
Sweet. Cool. So just GroMobi.com.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, so we don't have to think it. This is right there. Just Google it. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching SoE Live. I'm Griffin. I'm Eric. This is GroMobi. Yeah, thanks for joining us.